For decades, men have been sold the dream of retirement as pure freedom. Sunlit golf courses, empty clocks, time finally your own. But behind this promise lies a truth few talk about. Walking away from your job quietly takes more than a paycheck. The brain, shaped by decades of habit, loses its daily rhythm. Research shows identity, distress, and depression climb as structure vanishes. If the golden years were engineered, what are the real costs that come when the scaffolding disappears? In the years after World War II, a new vision of retirement began to take shape across America. Magazine spreads from the 1950s and the 1960s filled pages with images of white-haired couples on sunlit beaches, fishing rods in hand, or teeing off on quiet golf courses. Pension brochures promised a future free from alarm clocks and deadlines, where decades of work would be rewarded with ease and leisure. Corporate newsletters and advertisements, especially from the companies like MetLife and General Motors, offered not just financial security but a kind of promised land, one where every man could step into a world of endless weekends. This vision was not an accident. As companies expanded pension plans to keep workers loyal and manage an aging workforce, ad agencies were hired to sell the idea of retirement as a long-awaited escape. Slogans like, "Plan now for the day when you can say no more alarm clocks," and "After 30 years of faithful service, your freedom awaits," appeared in company pamphlets and in national magazines. The message was clear. Retirement was not just the end of work, but the beginning of something better. Yet beneath the glossy images and reassuring words, a quieter reality was taking hold. For many men, work had been more than just a means to a paycheck. It was the scaffolding for daily life, a source of status and identity. The new narrative of retirement as pure leisure glossed over this deeper truth. The golden years were engineered to look effortless, masking the fact that leaving work meant stepping away from routines and responsibilities that had quietly shaped a sense of self for decades. By the late 1960s, the idea of retirement as a time of boundless freedom had become part of the national imagination. Television commercials and insurance campaigns reinforced the promise, showing men trading briefcases for fishing poles, as if meaning and purpose would naturally follow. Missing from these images was any mention of what might be lost when the structure of work disappeared. The myth of effortless freedom, once planted, became hard to question. For many, the collision between this promise and the reality of retirement would arrive slowly, almost silently, in the space left behind. At 6:45 on a Monday morning, the foreman woke up to silence. For 30 years, his days began with the same routine. Coffee brewed in the dark, boots laced by muscle memory, the steady hum of the workshop waiting. Now the calendar on his kitchen wall was blank. He wandered into the garage, stood in the doorway, and listened to the quiet. The tools were lined up exactly where he had left them. But there was no job to start, no list to check, no reason to hurry. Work, it turns out, had been more than a paycheck. It had been the invisible framework that shaped every hour. Neuroscientists describe how the brain responds to routine. Familiar patterns of activity release small doses of dopamine, the chemical that rewards us for completing tasks. The daily rhythm of responsibility, showing up, solving problems, being needed, feeds a sense of order and purpose. Cortisol, the hormone that helps regulate stress, also follows these patterns. When structure falls away, the body loses its cues. Days stretch out, unanchored, and the mind drifts. The foreman tried to fill the hours. He swept the garage floor, sorted old screws by size, called a former coworker just to hear a familiar voice. But by mid-morning, the quiet was louder than ever. He found himself watching the clock, waiting for lunch, then counting the hours until his wife came home. The old routine had faded almost overnight, but its absence was everywhere, like a scarfold quietly removed, leaving the building still standing, but strangely whole inside. This kind of emptiness rarely announces itself. It settles in slowly, disguised as free time. For decades, work had provided a reason to get up, a place to belong, and a way to measure each day. Without it, even small tasks felt aimless. The foreman's story is not unusual. Studies show that after retirement, many men experience a gradual sense of disorientation. The loss of routine doesn't always feel dramatic. It arrives as a quiet void, a sense that something essential is missing, even when every practical need is met. A manager's last week at the office rarely feels like a celebration. For 40 years, his name had appeared on the schedules, his signature at the bottom of memos, his voice called on in meetings. Then, one afternoon, the company announced a round of restructuring. His position was eliminated. The following Monday, the alarm clock stayed silent. Half of all retirees leave work not by choice, but by circumstance, health, layoffs, or shifting priorities from above. For the manager, the calendar that once overflowed with deadlines and decisions now sat empty. The phone barely rang. He found himself reaching for a tie out of habit, only to let it drop back into the drawer. This quiet unraveling is more common than most realize. Studies show that 40% of men retire involuntarily, and among them, distress is twice as likely. Researchers have measured this feeling. Identity distress scores for men rise significantly after retirement, especially when the exit isn't planned. Nearly 1 in 3 retirees reports a full-blown crisis of identity in the first year. The loss isn't just about a title or a paycheck. It's the sudden absence of being needed, of having a place in the world. A small business owner describes the shift in different terms. For decades, his days started with early calls and ended with late-night emails. Now the office phone sits silent. The team has scattered. He lingers over his morning coffee, wondering what's left to organize. A gerontologist puts it simply: when work is gone, men are often left to answer a question they never expected: who am I when I'm no longer the person everyone depended on? Silence has a weight that is rarely discussed. For many men, the end of work brings not just a blank calendar, but an invisible pressure to keep struggles hidden. The cultural script is clear. A man provides, endures, and asks for little. Even after retirement, that expectation lingers, making it hard to admit when the days feel empty or directionless. A sociologist describes this as the provider role script, a set of unwritten rules that tie worth to usefulness. When work ends, the script does not vanish. Instead, it leaves men with questions they cannot easily answer out loud. Who am I if I am not the one others count on? What is my purpose if I no longer provide? This silence can carry real danger. Research shows that men face a 40% higher risk of depression after retiring. The numbers are even starker for those over 65, who have the highest suicide rate of any age group in the country. These struggles rarely make headlines. They unfold quietly behind closed doors, in homes where the phone no longer rings with work calls and where old routines have faded away. Most men never talk about these feelings. They assume the problem is personal, a private failing, rather than something shaped by decades of expectation. The result is a kind of isolation that grows deeper with time. A loneliness made heavier by the belief that it should not exist at all. The silence is not just personal. It is cultural, woven into the way men have been taught to measure their lives. Today, nearly 1 in 3 retired men report feeling a loss of purpose, often in silence. As longer lifespans extend this chapter, the question grows louder. When roles fade, what remains? Retirement doesn't just rearrange time. It quietly rewrites what it means to belong. Thanks for watching.